Ladies and gentlemen, Fred Hubbell is lying again, which means his lips are moving. This time he's not lying about Medicaid spending. He's trotting out the old saw that we don't have enough education funding. The governor's cutting funding. The legislature's cutting funding. Of course, he doesn't give any data in these commercials. And it's another insulting, idiotic political commercial intended to dupe people. So I did go look at the numbers. Now, I've covered some of this before in one of my other videos, a response to a guy who closed his account shortly after I uploaded it. And I already knew about some of these spending figures, snafus / kerfuffles, and Cato has covered that as well in one of their videos. So what I did, I endeavored to find out what is Iowa's education spending. And I utilize two sets of data, and I'll put up the screenshots of everything so you can read it as it's going along and pause the video if you need to. I utilize NASBO data and National Center for Education Statistics data, and there's a huge discrepancy between the two. And there's some notes that I'm going to put up pertaining to, and this was mentioned in the Cato video, a lot of states will exclude certain things. It's amazing what they will exclude to, like, if you exclude capital expenditures on buildings, well, students need buildings to learn. If you exclude certain pension benefits, yeah, the teachers accrue that while they're teaching, and I would go to a defined contribution system instead of a defined benefit system. I would do that. In fact, I'm going to be annoying my local officials about that more as far as state officials. But there's a lot of stuff that doesn't get included, and you'll see that there's a huge discrepancy between NASMO data and NCES data to where you got to wonder what's the actual number. And I'm not sure I even got the actual number. Iowa at one time didn't exclude much, but now they're excluding, as the years went on, they excluded Head Start spending, which is for kids younger, before kindergarten, of course. But how much are they spending on that? And that would definitely raise the per pupil costs. But if they're not reporting that, taxpayers are getting their money pilfered for it regardless. Another thing that must be noted, and I did this per pupil, in Iowa, fall 1992 enrollment was larger. Did you hear that? Fall 1992 enrollment was larger than it was for Iowa in the fall of 2005, 06, 07, 08, and 09. It wasn't until the fall of 2010 that Iowa's enrollment numbers climbed above the fall 1992 enrollment numbers for elementary and secondary schooling. But did the spending decline against the rate of inflation or stay static because the per pupil numbers was going down precipitously for a while? No. So I'm not going to read all this off. I'll have it on your screen as far as the NASBO data. And you can see how it is pretty much a monolithic rise. This is all these are nominal dollars, unless noted. And I do have some links to where you can look at the inflation-adjusted data. And we'll also get into the per pupil expenditures and what percentage of that is spent on so-called instruction. Because a lot of states will spend a lot of money on education and still whine for more. But a lot of it's going to administrative costs. That's another thing. We've seen the number of administrators balloon, and teachers too, but administrators have been growing at a massive rate. So, Fred Hubbell, we're not spending enough on education. Well, looking at the NASBO numbers, it's pretty much a monolithic rise. And looking at the NCES data, it's also a monolithic rise, and it's above the rate of inflation. Nothing's really being cut. Now, after the recession, after the housing market took a poopy, went straight into the toilet, it was typical for states to either lower their funding somewhat or keep it static, but it started upwards again. So there was a little blip on the screen there. The Iowa pupil per teacher ratio. Now, this isn't pupil per staff. We'll get to that. This is pupil per teacher. In the fall of 86 through 89, it averaged 15.65. I'll read this off. In the fall of 1992 to 95, it averaged 15.725. For the school year 2001-02, it was 14.2. The fall of 2012 through 2014, it averaged 14.2. And the school year 2015-2016, it averaged 14.2. So the Iowa pupil per teacher ratio has gone down. In fact, nationally, the trend has been significantly downward since the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So teachers have a lot less kids in the classroom. Now, if you look at the NASBO data per pupil expenditures, there it is for you. You can see a monolithic rise there. There is a blip from fiscal 2009 through to 10 where it goes down, but then it goes up again, then it goes down a little bit, and now it has resumed its monolithic rise. So what did he say is getting cut? I don't understand. Even under the brain dead, we call him Terry Brain Dead, not Branstad. No offense, Terry. But even under the Branstad-Reynolds regime, I haven't seen education spending per pupil take a huge drop. In fact, the last 4 years, it has risen steadily. So I don't know what Fred's talking about. He may not know what he's talking about. And here, Iowa per pupil expenditures, and this is above the rate of inflation, NCES data. And again, if you paid attention to the video rolling by, you'll see there's a huge discrepancy between NASBO and NCES data. But for what it's worth, in 2004-05, $9,223 per pupil. 05-06, $9,729 per pupil. 06-07, $10,311. 07-08, $11,126. 08-09, $11,667. 2010-11, $11,757. 2012-13, $12,110. 2013-2014, $12,481. And for 14 and 15, NCES changed the way they were tabulating this, so the total is not germane. It doesn't jive with the way it was tabulated before, so I didn't put it up. But for instruction, you can see for the same years, it goes $4,853 per pupil in 04-05. 05-06 is $4,933. 06-07, $5,290. 07-08, $5,763. 08-09, $6,159. 2010-11, $6,040. 2012-13, $6,317. 2013-2014, $6,469. And 2014-2015, $6,663. So there's not really, except for the period of 09, 08, 09, and then in 2010-11 it was lower. But again, it resumed its monolithic rise. And Chet Culver was governor until January 2011. The fiscal year 2011 had already started. So I guess if you want to whine about it, you could blame that fat turd for it. So here's some other information you need to know. Again, I have all the links under there. You can peruse these at your leisure. I put them all in there. I made sure they were all archived as well. Here's some sobering statistics. Iowa could spend a lot more on students, a lot more instruction if the legislature made sure more than 60% of all education expenditures stayed in the classroom or for instruction. They wouldn't have to raise taxes a dime, and that's what Fred wants to do because it's going to require tax hikes, which may or may not raise revenue enough. When roughly 48% of all expenditures are not spent on instruction, one has to wonder what all that money goes for. When you are perusing, and I gave a link to a very lengthy and detailed piece by the National Center for Education Statistics, and up above, I have the links as well and some specific tables you need to look at. I suggest you take a gander at tables 213.20, 213.40, and 213.50. You will see that the percentage of public school staff that are teachers in Iowa has fallen from 51% to 49.5%. That means more than one half of the entire staff are not teachers. That's roughly in line with the national trend, as more than half of the staff are not teachers. It wasn't always this way. That should raise some red flags. How did that increase? I wonder if that helped union membership. I understand you need janitors like McCain is through X, a guidance counselor, as well as a super, but you go to school to be taught by a teacher. When there's a bloated non-teaching staff, that's where a lot of your money is going. It's being run like the USPS. The typical Iowa school has only 7 pupils per staff member. Remember, it was 14.2 pupils per teacher. But the typical Iowa school has only 7 pupils per staff member, which is 12.5% lower than the national average. The national average is 8 pupils per staff member. So at the typical public school, no matter how many kids you have, there's 1 staff member per 8. If we raise that to the national average and spent 60% of all public schools expenditures on our classroom, we'd have a lot more money for the kids and wouldn't need to raise taxes a dime. But people who never utilize the public school pay for it. Should people subsidize my vehicles even though they never use them? I know, education's important. Federal involvement in education is completely and wholly unconstitutional. So if it was to exist at the highest level, it could exist as, say, the Iowa State Department of Education, but you can see how that's working out. Iowa's not as bad as a lot of states, I will say that. There's a lot of states that are a lot worse, and if you peruse the data, you can find that out for yourself. You'll figure it out. Fred Hubbell is full of you-know-what. Fred Hubbell is lying to the citizens of Iowa with his soundbite political ads, which are generalized and insulting. He's trying to dupe you, and displaying the facts takes more than a 60-second commercial, as I've elucidated here. If I were a dictator, and I don't want to be, I would make a law banning all political commercials that are less than 10 minutes long. Those that take the time to listen to the entire commercial will probably smell the BS if it's there. Those who don't want to listen will probably do what most people do when one of these commercials poisons the airwaves, mute it or change the channel. Have a nice day. So, Fred Hubbell's lying. There is no cutting going on in per pupil expenditures. Any small incremental decreases were happening all over the nation for most states, and there were Democrat governors in charge as well because they were out of money. I think, like I said, the biggest thing is the bloated staff. Pupils per teacher is way down from the 50s and 60s and 70s. So if you're an older person who graduated high school in the 50s, 60s, or 70s, and you're listening to this, you probably had a lot more kids in your classroom. And now it's 14.2. So Iowa hasn't seen a monolithic rise there. Our pupils per teacher, aren't an outlier. In fact, it's very low. Our pupils per staff member is very low, much lower than the national average. Sounds like we probably got a lot of fat to cut. And when you consider more than half of the staff are not teachers, and less than roughly 48% of all expenditures are not spent on instruction, there's a lot of money there. And again, as I said at the start, Iowa doesn't report Head Start funding, so Lord knows how much is going to that they're not reporting and lowballing. And a lot of states and districts have lowballed it. So Fred Hubbell, maybe Fred Hubbell, you should put this commercial up and just say, I'm a liar, and just drop out of the race and have it be down to Kim Reynolds and Jake Porter. And I'm voting for Jake Porter, despite the fact that I think he's an extremely flawed libertarian in some ways. But I am voting for Jake Porter. So the best thing Fred could do, make this your campaign commercial and admit that you're lying about education funding. There is no cutting going on. Only in your that little fantasy world you've created for yourself, Fred. Then there's some cutting. But in real life, there is none. I've displayed the facts, and you don't know them. You're either ignorant or lying. Which one is it? I'll just say you're ignorant, considering all the ignorant politicians we have in this country right now. I'm going to go out on a very small limb and say you're ignorant. Have a nice day, and don't thank me now for the facts.